Today we'll be sharing strategies for rope drop for early entry and for park opening if you aren't a resort guest. Hello and welcome to the Let's Go to Disney podcast. I'm Oliver.
And I'm Lucy.
Today is Sunday, June 9th, and you're listening to episode 39, Rope Dropping Early Entry versus Park Opening. Before we get into today's main topic, here's what's going on in the parks right now. Tiana's Bayou Adventure has been experiencing some issues during its cast member previews this week. The ride has had extended downtime and evacuations as they work out the kinks ahead of its official opening later this month. We aren't overly concerned. This is the reason they do previews, to really put the attraction through its paces before it's open to everyone. These issues will more than likely be ironed out by the time this attraction is available to all guests. We'll keep our ears to the ground for more news on this front as the opening draws nearer on June 28th. Disney revealed new details and our first looks at the rooms that will be at the brand new 10-story DVC Island Tower at the Polynesian Resort opening later this year on December 17th. There will be duo studios for dual occupancy, deluxe studios that will sleep up to 4 guests, as well as 1 and 2 bedroom villas and the luxurious 2-bedroom penthouse villas. The rooms feature a bright and airy color palette with island accents and touches inspired by Moana. They look really good, not unlike the style and the feel of the other new spaces across Disney property. We know some people don't like that. They prefer the more regal and heavily themed spaces, but these look really good. We'll definitely have to book a stay here.
It won't be cheap, but yes, we'll definitely have to book a stay there just to say we stayed there.
Yeah, 100%. And if we've never bought into DVC. We've always talked about it.
Yeah.
But if there was ever going to be a place that we would buy into, it would be that for sure.
I agree.
Lookout Key at Lighthouse Point on the island of Eleuthera? I think I'm pronouncing that right. In the Bahamas is officially welcoming guests on select cruises. This is Disney's second island location and features entertainment, adventures, trails, and of course, beaches. Disney Parks blog shared a look at some photos of the different offerings available on the island. Make sure to check those out if you've got an upcoming sailing to the new island. Fantasy Springs at Tokyo Disney Sea is officially open to guests to experience. CEO Bob Iger and Chairman of Disney Experiences Josh D'Amaro were present for a special opening ceremony. The initial reactions are overwhelmingly positive, and from everything we've seen on social media, it looks phenomenal. Tokyo Disney Sea is definitely a bucket list destination for us. There's a walk-up bar location coming to Disney Springs, Paddy's Bar. This is going to be replacing the existing mobile bar near Raglan Road and Cooks of Dublin, and it will have select beverage options. For eats, you'll still have to visit either the table service Raglan Road or the quick service Cooks of Dublin. It's expected to open later this fall. With that said, let's get into today's main topic, which is rope dropping and rope dropping strategies for the Walt Disney World Parks, whether you qualify for early entry or not. So just to clarify, Walt Disney World Resort guests and guests of select Good Neighbor hotels have access to early entry to the parks. In Walt Disney World, early entry is 30 minutes before official park opening for each of the 4 parks every single day. If you visited Disneyland, you'll know that this alternates over there currently between Disneyland and California Adventure. In Walt Disney World, all 4 parks have early entry every day of the week. So if you're a resort guest, it's definitely worth taking advantage of that perk. This is one of our favorite topics to talk about when it comes to Disney because we're definitely rope droppers.
Yes.
We love being the first people at the park, right at the front or as close to the front as possible, to the touch points to enter the parks. We're early risers back home, so we don't mind doing it, especially when we're at Disney. We love grabbing a coffee, whether in our room or on the go, taking the bus, monorail, Skyliner, depending on where we're staying, and lining up in anticipation of an awesome park day.
Absolutely. Like our kids are early risers like us, so they've never really had a problem with it. They get super excited about it too, so it's a lot of fun for us.
Yeah, agreed, 100%.
Rope dropping.
Yeah.
And so just so we're on the same page, rope dropping essentially means being at the park before it opens. Think lining up outside of an Apple store to be the first to buy the newest iPhone. It's in reference to being lined up at a rope to a certain land or attraction before the rope is dropped and you're allowed to enter. Now, this is more metaphorical than not because these days there are touch points and the lands don't actually have physical ropes. In fact, most don't. Some places still do, like Fantasyland over in Magic Kingdom, first thing in the morning. But broadly speaking, it refers to the act of being there before it opens and being potentially some of the first people to enter the land and to ride a certain attraction. While it's not necessary to be there for rope drop to have a great day and get a lot done, it can certainly help. It really does help. It helps us every single time.
Yeah, agreed, 100%.
If you are able to get up early and head to the parks just before they open, you can likely get at least a couple of rides done in the first half hour of the early entry. So rope drop is not quiet. A lot of people rope drop, but it definitely seems worse than it is because everyone is kind of gathered in the same spots. So sometimes it can feel very chaotic and claustrophobic almost.
Yeah, 100%. First thing in the morning, like everyone's waiting at the touch points, right? So
Yeah,
everyone's like waiting to go into the park.
Absolutely. But make no mistake, the parks get progressively busier as the morning wears on. So if you play your cards right and have an efficient morning, you are avoiding major crowds first thing, we promise. Plenty of people sleep in a bit and trickle into the parks around 10 o'clock or later. And that's when the crowds are really going to swell and peak. And the most popular rides won't let up for pretty much most of the day, if not the rest of the day.
Yeah, agreed 100%. If you aren't a resort guest and you don't qualify for early entry, it's still worth coming to the parks early and hear us out.
Especially Magic Kingdom.
Yeah, 100%. You won't have access to the same areas or the parks at all in some cases, which we'll get into in a minute. But a half hour after park open, crowds will still be lower than the height of the day. So you can still get a few things done early in the morning before the rest of the crowds arrive. So for example, if the park opens at 9 and early entry was at 8:30, you should definitely aim to get there between 8:30 and 9 to be able to enter the park like right when it opens, right at 9 o'clock, and take advantage of those earlier times in the day. Long story short, the old adage, the early bird gets the worm, right? 100% applies to your park day.
Yeah.
If you're willing to get up early, you'll be rewarded with shorter waits and the opportunity to get quite a few things done before everyone else starts to arrive.
Absolutely. So the next thing that we want to touch on before we get into the actual specific strategies to the 4 parks is getting to the touch points early enough to get a shot at being some of the first guests through the entry points. So generally speaking, you'll be able to start queuing at the touch points 1 hour before early entry. I know it seems early.
Yeah, and it can be. Yeah.
It can be, but there is reason for it. So, for example, if Magic Kingdom officially opens at 9 a.m. and early entry is 8:30 a.m., you're going to be able to queue at the touch point starting around 7:30 a.m. The first buses, the monorail, and the Skyliner will all let off around that time, around 7:30.
Yep.
So, by this logic, you know you need to be on whatever form of transportation you're using before 7:30, like before.
Yeah,
Yes,
for sure. Absolutely.
In broad strokes, buses are going to start to run about an hour and a half before early entry. So if your resort is further away from the park you're at, buses will usually run earlier to make sure that you are at the parks for 7:30 or an hour before early entry. This is for the first bus of the day. So for example, when we take the bus to Magic Kingdom from a resort such as Coronado Springs, which is very close to Hollywood Studios, EPCOT, and Animal Kingdom, but it's actually further away from Magic Kingdom and has an internal bus loop. There are 4 stops at Coronado Springs. Little tidbit there. That bus comes pretty much right around 7 or an hour and a half before early entry. So if you're staying at a resort that is closer to the park you're visiting and only has 1 stop within the resort, like Wilderness Lodge, for example, in our experience, that bus comes closer to about 7:20 because it physically is closer to Magic Kingdom. So if you arrive at or around 7:30, you will be let out right away. But if your bus is a touch early, you're going to probably be held up by the drivers. They usually get the all clear around 7:30. This has happened to us a few times where we just sat on the bus for maybe like 5-10 minutes.
Yeah, not long, right? Like, and this is usually Coronado Springs because the bus does pick up earlier.
You're going to be doing your first selections on the buses.
yeah, exactly. If 7 o'clock hits when you're on the bus, you will for sure be doing that. But yeah, that's the case, right? Coronado Springs is further away. The bus picks up sooner because you have to still do the loop around the resort and give yourself time to get to the park.
Yeah.
Whereas Wilderness Lodge, and we did this just on our most recent trip, I think it's like 7:22 is when we got on the bus.
Yeah, you can sleep in a little longer if you wanted to.
Really.
Or have more time for that coffee in the morning and stuff. Yeah,
100%. If you're taking the monorail from a monorail resort on the resort's loop, they'll start to run around 7:10 or so, or an hour and 20 minutes before early entry, give or take. Very important caveat here, if you take the first few monorails, they will essentially loop around the resort's loop over and over. Here's a pro tip. You can take whatever monorail comes first, sure, but the best strategy is to take the monorail that will be the first to stop at Magic Kingdom and actually let guests out. Okay, so this is the trick. Talk to the cast members at your resort that are working at the specific monorail station, and they'll be able to tell you which monorail that will be. The first time we rope dropped with the monorail, staying at a monorail resort, we took the first one and we were disappointed because A couple of the monorails had let out before we did,
Yeah.
but that didn't last long, right?
Rookie mistake.
Yeah, 100%. We learned really quickly. So our second park day, we knew better.
Yeah.
Cast members told us which one would be letting out Magic Kingdom first, and we were able to get right at the front of the touch points.
Mm-hmm.
Another note as well is you go through security before you board the monorail at your resort, so you'll be let out on the secure side, so to speak, and you won't have to go through security when you get to Magic Kingdom, which is definitely nice as well because it saves you a little bit of time. If you're taking the express line from TTC to Magic Kingdom, that'll run closer to 7:30. Guests staying at the Poly can certainly walk there. That's an option, but you'll also be contending with the crowds that are driving and parking at the TTC, so something to keep in mind there. If you're rope dropping EPCOT, you can either walk to the TTC and queue for the EPCOT line or take the resort's monorail loop, get off at TTC and transfer. If you're on foot, they'll let you start to queue around 30 minutes before early entry for the EPCOT or Magic Kingdom Express lines. For EPCOT, the monorail will drop you off at the front entrance and you'll queue there with the guests driving or arriving via bus.
For the Skyliner resorts, which are Art of Animation, Pop Century, Caribbean Beach Resort, and Riviera, you'll take the Skyliner to Hollywood Studios and EPCOT. Caribbean Beach is the hub for all the Skyliner system. From there, you either take the Hollywood Studios line or the EPCOT line. And if you're coming from Art of Animation and Pop Century, you're going to transfer at Caribbean Beach for either EPCOT or Hollywood Studios. If you're staying at Riviera, you can take the EPCOT line directly from there because it's on the way and you'll transfer at Caribbean Beach for Hollywood Studios. Caveat for Riviera here, it's actually walking distance to the Caribbean Beach Resort. We suggest taking the Skyliner from the Riviera on your EPCOT days, but taking it from Caribbean Beach on your Hollywood Studios days. These are going to save you that transfer. Quick note here is that for EPCOT, you're actually going to arrive at the International Gateway entrance, which is actually a perk in our opinion. We prefer to arrive there because that sets you up really nicely to rope drop Remy's Ratatouille Adventure in the France Pavilion, which is right next to the International Gateway entrance. Either way, you have options. People will start queuing at the Skyliner before it starts running, and the Skyliner will start going around an hour before early entry, but usually sooner. So the first guests are arriving to the parks around an hour before early entry, like the guests coming off the buses. This will vary though, but depends on when the park opens. Early entry is sometimes earlier when the parks open earlier. The lines before early entry are actually not as bad as you would think, but they do get long very fast. So again, early entry is key here.
Yeah, 100%. And being early to the Skyliner stations.
Early to being early, yes.
Yeah, exactly. It really, it's like, yeah, it's kind of a constant thing.
Yeah.
If you want to be on the first bus, you want to be on the first few gondolas, you know, you want to be on the first monorail to let out. That's the key is you're going to be front at the touch points when you get there.
We like to be first.
Yeah, 100%. And like the further back you are, right, you're getting in later.
Stressful, yeah.
Yeah. And lastly, if you're driving to any of the parks, you'll be able to queue right around an hour with the guests arriving from the other transportation options, save for Magic Kingdom, where you'll have to park and either take a ferry or monorail to the front gates. So that covers how you can get to the parks to set yourself up for success to execute your rope drop strategy. Don't discount this part of your morning, okay? So like we're kind of just saying, even 10-15 minutes can make a huge difference. If you arrive in the first few gondolas, monorails, or buses, you're likely to be close to the front. If you arrive even just like 10-15 minutes later than the first guests, you can be much, much further back. We expend a lot of time and effort planning our transportation and timing to the parks. We have it pretty much down to a science now, but it's worth spending time thinking about that. Again, early bird gets the worm here.
Absolutely.
So with that said, let's get into specific rope drop strategies for each of the 4 parks, and we'll kick things off with Magic Kingdom.
So for Magic Kingdom, like we said, depending on which transportation got you to the parks, if you're at the front or nearest to the front at the touch points, you'll be among the first guests into the park for the day. So usually you'll be at the touch points right around 7:30 if the park officially opens at 9 and early entry is at 8:30. You'll actually be let into the park much before 8:30 though. We've actually gotten in as early as right around 7:45 or 45 minutes or so before early entry. And sometimes it's much later, like closer to 8 or even a bit after. It kind of depends on the day, really.
Yeah, it's a little bit inconsistent in that sense.
It really is. So you can't really bank on that.
Yeah.
The thing about Magic Kingdom, though, is there's things to do before the park even opens. So when you're let into the parks, you'll be able to walk around Town Square, up and down Main Street, right up to the hub, and you'll be able to get some really great shots of the castle, if that's important to you, with less people kind of hovering around there at the time. Guests who qualify for early entry will be funneled to the right of the hub into either Fantasyland or Tomorrowland. Before you're able to enter the lands, though, there's going to be a wall of cast members with tablets that you're going to scan your magic band or ticket with to confirm that you actually qualify for early entry before you continue on. So only one person from your guest group needs to scan. So if you're a party of 2 or more, you're only going to need that one person to scan for the whole party. So from there, you'll have the option to either go queue to Tomorrowland or Fantasyland. Frontierland and Adventureland and also Liberty Square don't open until official park opening at 9 a.m., if that's official park opening time.
Yeah, 100%. If you're going to Tomorrowland, you'll go straight to the right of the castle, across the bridge, and you'll be held there. Cast members will be waiting for you, and you'll wait on the far side of the bridge until you're led into the land. Most people who queue here are heading to Space Mountain because that's the most popular ride with a standby queue. Okay, so like currently in Tomorrowland, right?
Yes.
Eventually, at some unknown time in the future, right, Tron is no longer going to operate a virtual queue and it'll have a regular standby queue. When that happens, this would likely be where everyone would be going if rope dropping Tomorrowland, right? So the cast members at the front represent the different attractions, and when the rope quote unquote drops, meaning they start walking people forward, you'll follow the cast members to whatever attraction you're going to. It can get a little chaotic walking towards Space Mountain because it's pretty wide open, like in terms of space, but for the most part, it's not too bad, especially when you compare it to Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, which we'll get into in a minute.
PTSD.
Yeah. If you choose to rope drop Fantasyland, you'll go around to the right of the castle, across the bridge, and you'll be held right next to Cheshire Cafe and in front of the Mad Tea Party. Here, there's going to be a wall of cast members and a physical rope as well.
One of the few spots.
Yeah, exactly. This is where you'll be essentially waiting until you're led into the land. Most people here are heading to Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, right? Which stands to reason. It's the most popular attraction in Fantasyland. Now, we're not here to tell you what to do. We like to give you guys information and options. And we always say, you know your party best, and you're the best person to make decisions for your travel party. But hear us out. Okay, so in our opinion, rope dropping Seven Dwarfs Mine Train is by far the best use of your early entry time, because this ride will have a long wait from like a few minutes after early entry until the very end of the day.
Solid throughout the whole day.
There's never not a line at Seven Dwarfs Mine Train.
Solid all the time.
If you're near the front of the pack, you'll get on fairly quickly and you won't have to worry about getting in that long line later or purchasing an individual lightning lane if you don't want to, or if you already purchased an individual lightning lane for Tron, for example. These can get expensive very quickly, so it's a good way to check off a heavy hitter first thing in the morning. One thing to note here, this is chaotic. Okay, so this is what I kind of referenced, right? So probably the most chaotic attraction to rope drop across all 4 parks. When cast members are ready to go, they'll remove the rope, and similar thing, you'll follow the cast members towards the attraction. You'll go left of the Mad Tea Party towards Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, but the cast members at the front will go right and hug the wall that lines the attraction as they make their way to the front. Everyone falls in behind, like in a much tighter queue space than the massive glob you were just in, so it can get quite pushy around that time.
I have seen grown men pushing little kids out of the way.
It's just generally,
it's intense.
Yeah, it's generally not very pleasant. Okay, it's by far the worst part of the day. But as soon as you're in the queue side by side with your party again, the day is gravy from there.
I agree.
If you're on Seven Dwarfs Mine Train fairly quickly, say in the first like 10, 15 minutes or so, you're doing pretty well. Note, the line will move quick here. There's no lightning lanes in the first half hour during early entry, so it actually moves quickly, like more quickly than during normal operating hours.
Yeah, it'll look chaotic, but once you guys start to move into the single file queue, you're pretty much on in one of the first few to ride.
Yeah, agreed 100%. We've never waited more than like 5 minutes at the max, right? So yeah.
It just looks worse than it actually is.
Yeah.
So if you went to Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, we actually suggest heading to Peter Pan from there. We said this many times on the podcast, but that wait time will be inflated, likely something like 30 to 50 minutes or more. The wait will actually almost be significantly less than that. In our experience, it's usually half the time or even less. So a posted 40-minute wait will actually be closer to 20, like I said, maybe even 15 at that point.
Yep.
Again, great use of your time here because Peter Pan will always consistently have long waits throughout the day. So once you're done these 2 attractions, the park is likely to be opening to everyone at this point or very close to it. And from there, you have a few options. You can head to Jungle Cruise as wait times won't have peaked here yet, since Adventureland doesn't open until actual park open, or you can head to Haunted Mansion, which will more likely be a walk-on, and Big Thunder Mountain Railroad will also be a walk-on from there as well.
Yeah, almost
they
certainly.
Usually always are.
Yeah, like 10 minutes or less for sure. Yeah.
Especially if you're going to be doing Genie Plus, because Jungle Cruise is actually a great use of your first Genie Plus pick. Big caveat here is Tiana's Bayou Adventure. So before Splash Mountain shut down, it was popular, but not overly so. It was just typical. It would have lower wait times in the morning, so the order in which you did the Frontierland and Adventureland attractions didn't really matter. But when Tiana's Bayou Adventure opens on June 28th and the standby queue opens up, you can be sure that for the next little while at least, when Frontierland is opened, everyone will be heading there. Like,
Yeah, 100%.
everybody.
Yeah, like
it's going to be a hot topic.
Yeah, as far as we know, Frontierland's not going to open for early entry.
Oh, that'd be interesting if they did that.
It's been Fantasyland and Tomorrowland for a long time.
Forever, yeah.
But yeah, like at Park Open, when Frontierland does open, like people are going to be waiting for that, and like everyone's going to be going there, guaranteed. Yeah.
Disney has said that it's going to operate a virtual queue essentially, but not for long. So when the standby queue opens for that, we would actually suggest heading straight there until the hype dies down. Or if you're purchasing Genie Plus, Disney has said it'll be on Disney Genie Plus, which will be the most logical first choice instead of Jungle Cruise, but that'll be the next few months at least.
Yeah, for at least the first few months,
absolutely.
For sure. Like Peter Pan and Jungle Cruise are going to be bumped, and Tiana's going to go to the top of...
And it will probably stay like that for a little while.
Yeah, for sure, until the hype dies down and everyone's had a chance to ride it, right? If you are not eligible for early entry, we still suggest the same strategy to get to the parks. And the reason we say this is because, like we said, you'll have access to Town Square, Main Street, the Hub, the Castle, so you'll be able to get some great photos with minimal people around. And then you can queue at the entrance to either Adventureland or, Liberty Square and be some of the first people into those sections of the park. If you're there during this time, we suggest Jungle Cruise be your first attraction, as that'll open right when the park opens. If you're purchasing Genie Plus, Peter Pan, like in current now times until June 28th, would be a good first choice. Again, this changes the second Tiana's Bayou Adventure opens. Once the standby queue opens for that, we suggest to head there first thing, like once that section of the park opens, and that it'd be your first Genie Plus selection for the day as well. Once you're off Jungle Cruise or Tiana's, we would try to get a few of the nearby attractions done. So think Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, Haunted Mansion before the lines start to swell there. Not to say that you wouldn't be able to head to Fantasyland or Tomorrowland, but the big thing is that all of the early entry guests will be coming from there or likely still going to be there, right? Versus the Adventureland and Frontierland, which won't have any guests in it yet because it wasn't open, right? You can be some of the first people in that section of the park. So in the end, it comes down to what's important to you, but that's how we would play it.
Absolutely. And really from there, regardless how your day started, the day is yours. In the hour or so after the park opens, it'll get progressively busier, but it's a good time to get as many rides as possible done. And if you're using Genie Plus, again, the best strategy is to mix standby queues with Genie Plus return times to maximize your day.
Yeah, agreed 100%.
Next up is Hollywood Studios. So over at Hollywood Studios, we generally have a much more pleasant rope drop experience. I never feel stressed Hollywood Studios mornings.
Agreed 100%.
Never feel stressed.
It's like getting to the park and queuing at the touch points, nothing changes there. It's a very similar experience. But yeah, I don't feel the same amount of pressure than I do at Magic Kingdom. Yeah, agreed.
And we actually think that that's part due to the fact that there's several heavy hitters and the entire park opens at early entry. So people can literally head anywhere, and you can feel it when you're going in from the first touch points at the entrance. Yep. Everybody just kind of scatters to do their own thing.
And for the most part, I'd say, I don't know, I don't want to put percentages on it, but a lot of people head to Slinky Dog Dash.
Yes.
A lot of people head to Rise of the Resistance.
Yes.
And then a smaller subset of people go right down Sunset towards Tower of Terror. Yeah.
It might change a little bit once Rock and Roller Coaster reopens and stuff like that. So
maybe a few more people will go down Sunset. Yeah.
Absolutely. So people are, like I said, are scattering kind of everywhere throughout the park. Having said that, we actually don't suggest you rope drop Star Tours. So let's just get into our recommendations.
Yeah, 100%. So again, regardless of how you got to the park, everyone will start to queue at the front of the touch points right around 7:30 if the park opens at 9 and early entry is 8:30. Okay, so nothing changes there. Unlike Magic Kingdom, though, the early entry scan point, where the cast members will scan your magic bands or tickets to confirm that you qualify for early entry, isn't actually inside the park. It's actually just past security at the arches that lead to the touch points. So once you clear security, one member of your party will scan, and then you're free to queue at one of the lines. Similarly to Magic Kingdom, they will actually let you into the park before 8:30, but usually not quite as early as Magic Kingdom. Once you enter the park, in our opinion, it makes the most sense to do one of three things. And we'll get into those. Okay, so 1, you go straight towards the Grauman Theater and then to the right, past it, and continue on into Toy Story Land and head to Slinky Dog Dash, right? So this attraction is wildly popular. It always has a really long queue throughout the day. It's all outdoors and a lot of it is in the sun. So to avoid that line later, it's 100% a good candidate for your first ride of the day. Quick note here, this is a much more orderly rope drop. Great. So like we said, it just feels much more pleasant than Magic Kingdom and Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. You basically speed walk and then you're fuddled into a queue right away, right along that railing on the right side of the attraction. It's glorious in its organization, and we love it.
Exactly. You're not coming from this massive glump of people because you all have been walking at a different pace from the entry. So usually your party's solo walking into the queue.
Yeah, exactly. You funnel into the queue
behind the other families that made it there before you.
Yeah, exactly. However fast you walk there, and then that's your spot, and you don't have to worry about.
It's actually quite refreshing.
way nicer. Yeah, agreed, 100%. When you're off Slinky Dog Dash, it also sets you up nicely because it's a quick ride, right? And as soon as you're off, you can head to Toy Story Mania. Mm-hmm. This will likely be a walk-on at this point, and from there you can either head into Galaxy's Edge to ride Millennium Falcon and Smuggler's Run, which will also have a shorter wait, or you can head back down to the Grauman Theater for Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway.
Absolutely.
These rides are all fairly close to each other, all things considered, right? So you can get 2, maybe even 3 done in the first half hour. Number 2, when you enter, you go towards the center of the park and turn left back alongside Echo Lake and straight left all the way down into Galaxy's Edge for Rise of the Resistance. Rise is still an individual lightning lane, and it will also have long lines all day. So it's a good use of your early entry time as well if you don't want to wait in a long line later here and you don't want to purchase an individual lightning lane. Similar thing as well, you're essentially speed walking, right? So once your speed walk is done, you're funneled into yeah, exactly. Once it's done, you funnel into a queue and it's much more orderly. Mm-hmm. There are 2 things to keep in mind here though. So first, the attraction itself takes around 20 minutes to experience. So when you factor in the different stages, if you can call them that, if you've ridden it, you know what we're talking about. And if not, it's not a quick attraction, right? You're going to be here for a bit.
Yeah.
Which is awesome, right? It's like a phenomenal attraction.
Phenomenal. Can't praise it enough.
Yeah, 100%. But it does take up precious early entry time. We don't like to rope drop Rise for this reason. The queue for Rise is like largely inside. It's cool. It's dark. It's not nearly as miserable to wait in, like compared to Slinky Dog.
Which is just like the sun will beat down on you 100%. On Slinky Dog.
And it's all outside. There's no AC.
There's no shade.
Whereas like in the queue for Rise, you will have that. You'll have the dark, you'll have the AC. So all things being equal, we'd rather wait in the Rise queue than the Slinky Dog queue.
Absolutely.
Regardless, if you're some of the first guests on the attraction, you can head to Smuggler's Run after that, and then into Toy Story Land for Toy Story Mania, or back towards Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, and then perhaps Sunset Boulevard for Tower of Terror. And 3, when you enter the park, you turn right at your first available opportunity and head down Sunset Boulevard towards Tower of Terror, which again has a very orderly queue right from the start here as well. It's super pleasant to rope drop, typically because less people go there. You kind of line up right away, and it's just like, again, it's just much more orderly and it's much nicer.
You even have time to like go to the bathroom if you need
100%.
to.
It's just pleasant, right? It's just much nicer.
There's actually 2 bathrooms along the way just to get to Tower of Terror. So it's just, you just don't feel the stress as much in Hollywood Studios. You don't feel the stress at all in the mornings.
Yeah, agreed. Tower of Terror can have long waits. It's not sustained long waits as much as rides like Slinky Dog and Rise, but it's still a good rope drop strategy, especially if you're purchasing Genie Plus. Mm-hmm. As you know, we recommend your first Genie Plus Lightning Lane pick to be Slinky Dog because it's the first to completely book up every day consistently. So if you snagged a lightning lane for Slinky Dog and you got an individual lightning lane for Rise or plan to head there later, Tower of Terror is a good third alternative. Here you'll likely be able to do Tower of Terror and then Rock and Roller Coaster once it opens up in July, which is right next door. And if the parks aren't too busy, you'll likely be able to double up and ride these twice before heading into the rest of the park.
Which we have done.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. From there, we'd head to Mickey and Minnie's because it's the closest ride, or do Galaxy's Edge and Toy Story Land. Again, it just depends on what's going on and how kind of busy it feels. Mm-hmm. Or you could get these done in the afternoon as well, depending on your overall strategy, right? So when we have the kids, we rope drop Slinky Dog. And when it's just the 2 of us, we usually rope drop Tower of Terror. You've got a few options here at Hollywood Studios. And again, it all depends on what's important to you. Are you purchasing Genie Plus? And what queues do you mind less when it comes to waiting in them?
Absolutely. Hollywood Studios is fairly compact, so you can cover a lot of ground during early and the first hour or so of the park opening. So what we find with Hollywood Studios is that wait times during early entry aren't bad at all because the entire park is open. So the crowds are somewhat dispersed, everybody's spread out, but they peak quickly. Hollywood Studios has fewer attractions than a park like Magic Kingdom.
Yeah, exactly.
So, that obviously means less places for people to go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So for non-resort guests, like we said, you can scan for early entry here before you actually queue at the touch points. So unlike Magic Kingdom, you won't be allowed into the parks at all until it officially opens. You'll queue at the front of the park and be let in right when the park opens. That being said, it's still worth it to arrive at the park somewhere between 8:30 and 9 to be some of the first non-resort guests to enter the park. From there again, wait times for Slinky Dog and Rise will be high, but not as high as they're going to be when the masses arrive. So you can still take advantage of lower than average wait times for the heavy hitters and the less popular attractions as well. So it's the same options here: Galaxy's Edge for Rise, Toy Story Land for Slinky Dog, or Sunset Boulevard for Tower of Terror. You can also head straight for Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, which is right in front of you as you enter at the Grauman Theater, and the wait for that is generally very low until official park open, when it starts to swell up again.
Yeah, agreed 100%. Next up is EPCOT. So right off the hop, EPCOT is unique because it has 2 entrances. It's the only park that has more than a main entrance, like a main front entrance. Yeah. So here you have the main entrance in front of Spaceship Earth and the International Gateway entrance, which lets you in near the back of the World Showcase in between the France and UK pavilions. Where you're coming from will determine what strategy we suggest for your early entry time. If you're wondering which entrance you'll be coming from, it comes down to where you're staying. If you're staying at any of the EPCOT area resorts like Yacht and Beach Club, Boardwalk Inn, Swan and Dolphin, Swan Reserve, you'll be able to walk with your own 2 feet to the International Gateway entrance from your resort, which is super nice, like a nice walk along the boardwalk with the water there. Yep. It's a super nice area of Walt Disney World. Also, if you had a resort on the Skyliner route, so think Art of Animations, Pop Century, Caribbean Beach Resort, and Riviera, you'll be taking the Skyliner to EPCOT. So the Skyliner station at EPCOT spits you out like literally right next to the International Gateway entrance, like right beside it. So if you're arriving on foot, similar thing as the other parks, right? Aim to be there around an hour before early entry. So that's 7:30 if early entry is 8:30 and the park officially opens at 9. Here you'll clear security and be allowed to queue at the touch points at this entrance. Similar thing as the other parks as well, as you'll be allowed to walk through the gates and into the parks usually before 8:30.
Absolutely. In our experience, they'll do it in stages here. So you're going to queue at the entrance, and once they let you in, there's another queue further up the walkway that leads into the World Showcase. You'll be held here again for a little bit. We've probably only been held there for maybe like 15 minutes max.
At the max.
Yeah, max.
And it's usually, sometimes they'll let you right through,
yep.
But sometimes you do wait. So it's just hit and miss.
I'm assuming it's probably crowd levels that they're expecting that day and stuff. So this is where you'll scan your ticket or magic band to confirm you qualify for early entry. Again, only one person from your party needs to scan. And when you are let through here, you come out at the International Gateway walkway with the UK Pavilion on your left and the France Pavilion on your right. So you can head either towards the front of the park for Frozen or Trest Track, but the guests coming in from the front entrance are going to beat you there. So we actually highly recommend heading right towards France and queuing up for Remy's Ratatouille Adventure. So you'll proceed over the bridge and keep right towards France. You're going to follow the crowd, essentially, is
Everyone's
what it is.
heading there,
yeah. So here you're going to be held up again along the railing on one side of the bridge. Again, much more orderly than Rope Dropping Magic Kingdom. This one's actually quite nice as well.
Yep.
So once the cast members are ready, they're going to walk you forwards and into the queue for Remy's right around 8:30. Once you're off Remy's, we actually suggest you head over to Frozen. So key point here is when you're walking to Frozen from France, head left towards UK and not right towards Morocco. When you look at the map or across the lagoon, it actually seems like it would be way closer to head right, but we promise you it's actually faster to head left.
I know, like it
seems weird. We know.
It like contravenes like conventional wisdom in the sense that like you're looking at it and you're like, no, it's got to be right, but just trust us, it's
Turn
left.
left.
100%. Yeah.
It sits pretty much right across the water and it's less steps, and you're going to beat the people that are going right, assuming you're traveling at the same speed. We can guarantee that.
Yep.
We actually should test that out one time. I go right, you go left, and we'll see.
I walk faster than you, though, so I'll beat you there.
That's true. So after Frozen, you can head to Test Track, but keep in mind the park will likely probably be open at this time, and many guests are going to head there because it's the closest popular attraction from the front of the park. So reminder that the Guardians of the Galaxy does not have a standby queue. It's a virtual queue, so that doesn't factor in as of this recording. That could eventually change, though.
Agreed. Yep.
So we'll quickly mention it's unlikely that you'll find yourself at the International Gateway entrance if you're not a resort guest. There's actually no reason why you would be there. Yeah. So if you're staying at the EPCOT area resorts or on a Skyliner resort, you'll qualify for early entry. So you'll be able to enter the park as you arrive or as soon as you are let in. If for some reason you found yourself here as a non-resort guest, you wouldn't actually be able to get past that early entry checkpoint until the park opens. And then you could head to Remy's from there. But it would be a lower wait time probably than at the height of the day. Yep. And that's how it works at the International Gateway entrance.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. We love entering from the International Gateway entrance, right? You're kind of limited into when you can do that depending on where you're staying, but it is Like in our opinion, Remy's is probably the busiest ride, and it's the one that books up first with Genie Plus. So it's definitely a good candidate for rope drop.
Absolutely.
If you're arriving by bus, monorail, or driving, you'll be arriving at the front entrance. So just like the other parks, the first buses, the first monorail, and the people who drove will be able to start going through security and queue at the touch points right around an hour before early entry. Once you queue at the touch points, they do it in stages here as well. So quick note here, at least in our experience, it's been slightly different every single time.
Every single time.
So we've been let into the parks and scanned for early entry just to the left of Spaceship Earth before we are let into the park to head towards Test Track or Frozen. Or right towards Remy's. You can do that as well. We've also been funneled like hard right when entering in the park. Like
that was
in
a weird
front
one.
of in front of guest relations to the right of Spaceship Earth. Like when you're facing it. This was the scan point for early entry, and we were let into the park from there. This was our most recent experience when we were there in May. After scanning for early entry, we were able to walk towards Frozen to the left of the newly opened World Celebration Gardens, right along the Creations shop. Regardless of how we got here, this is consistently where you're held if you're rope dropping Frozen. So like the entry portion has been different, but every single time that's where you wait.
We wait at Creations.
Before going to Frozen. If you head to Test Track, you'll be held over there before entering the queue. Once you're let in, it's actually quite the trek from Creations to Norway. So turn on the speed walking jets here to be some of the first guests in the queue. This is what we suggest, by the way. Once you scan for early entry, head to either Frozen or Test Track. As soon as you get to either attraction, again, it's an orderly queue and a pleasant experience. If you went to Frozen, you can definitely make it to Remy's from there. The wait time will be long already, but it's almost certainly going to be less of a wait than the height of the day, right? So we did this on our most recent trip, and we got to Remy's, and it was already a posted 60-minute wait. You remember that?
Our son was so sad when he saw that.
But again, we waited something, I think it was like 32 minutes we clocked it, which is way less than what you'd wait in at any other point in the day, right? So again, those wait times early morning consistently, this has been an experience like in several parks, several different times a year, is that the posted wait is going to be way higher than what your experienced wait time will be early morning.
Consistently, it's always been that case.
Yeah. You could also head to Test Track from Frozen or from Frozen to Test Track and have a much shorter wait as well. You can rope drop Remy's from the front entrance. You can go right and you'll be held there. We have done this, right? But it's just not quite as efficient as rope dropping Frozen or Test Track because the International Gateway entrant guests...
They're going to beat you to it.
100%. They're going to beat you there, right? So, but you'll still wait significantly less than later in the day. So if that's important to you, it's definitely a viable option as well.
Absolutely. So quick note here, Genie Plus is probably not necessary at EPCOT if you're here for early entry outside of the busiest times of the year. But if you were purchasing the service, we'd actually choose Remy's first. That's the most popular for sure. And then we're going to choose probably Frozen or Test Track after that. So as you can see, you have a few options here depending on which entrance you're coming in from and where you'd like to start your day from there. The thing about EPCOT is that it actually has few really heavy hitters. So if you have an efficient morning, you can actually get all these rides done well before lunch.
Yeah, agreed 100%.
If then you have time to walk through those showcases and stuff.
Exactly. Like if you can get Frozen, Test Track, and Remy's done all before noon.
And a Guardians ride in.
Yeah, like from your virtual queue or whatever, like you're having a really good day at EPCOT.
You're having an awesome day.
Yeah.
If you're coming from the front entrance as a non-resort guest, again, you're not going to qualify for early entry, but you'll be able to enter the park because the scan point for early entry is inside the park. There's not a whole lot to do here, but it would set you up nicely to get ready to go right at 9, and you'll be close enough to Spaceship Earth to get some really good photos before the park gets super busy. And once you're let in, Test Track is the closest attraction and a really good choice. The wait time should be manageable, and you're going to get on fairly quickly. You could also head to Frozen or Remy's. Again, the wait times are going to be high, but not as high as they're going to be at the height of the day. It's still worth arriving early and getting as much as you can get done in the morning. Like we are big about getting stuff done in the morning.
Agreed. Yep.
Broadly speaking, EPCOT doesn't really wake up, in quotes here, until 11. So that's when all of the food booths around the World Showcase open, and you can start to enjoy all the festival offerings, assuming you're there during a festival.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, like 11 o'clock, all those booths will start to open.
You can feel it in the showcase.
Yeah,
it starts
exactly.
to get
it starts to get busy for sure. And like that's what we like to do. We like to get go hard in the morning, get the rides done, and then start to enjoy some of that food
especially
right
if we
around
don't have
lunchtime.
the kids with us. We love the World Showcases. So we're all about taking our time, picking different foods. We already kind of usually know what snacks we want ahead of time too.
Yeah, 100%.
But the kids, they don't really have the patience as much for that right now. So we try and just keep them busy with rides. But
But we did it a few times on the last one.
You're right, and they were awesome because they got to have a treat too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So as long as you get something that they'll be able to enjoy, like those cinnamon bites or cinnamon bun bites, whatever you call them, at BrunchCot, they love those, right? So if you give them something to snack on, I'm sure they'll be
willing to hang out with you for a few minutes.
At least that's our experience, right? And last but certainly not least is Animal Kingdom. So Animal Kingdom is usually the park that opens the earliest and also closes the earliest. So today, June 9th, for example, Magic Kingdom, Hollywood Studios, and EPCOT all opened at 9 and close at 9, except for Magic Kingdom that closes a touch later at 10. Animal Kingdom opens at 8 and closes at 6. It's the park with the most relaxed vibe, so it's a good park to put on the back of a Magic Kingdom day. We love to do that.
Actually, that's a really good idea.
Kind of to have a bit of a slower day. Or it's a good day to hop if you have park hopper tickets, right?
Absolutely.
Because so for example, today it closes at 6. If you're not ready to shut her down at 6.
You want to hit some food booths up?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's a great example. Head over to EPCOT, right? Eat some food, check out Luminous, or head to Magic Kingdom for, similar thing. You can do a couple rides and check out Happily Ever After. Early entry would be 7:30, right? When the park opens at 8. And like we suggest, you want to be there around an hour before early entry. So that would be 6:30.
Your Animal Kingdom day is an early day. Yeah. It's the dreaded day out of all of them.
Yeah, exactly.
It is worth it though.
It is for sure. This is the only park with bus-only transportation when it comes to Disney transportation. So no monorail, no Skyliner, no boats, no walking access. You could drive. So that's really the only two options is driving or bus. Yeah. So for Animal Kingdom, like the other parks, you'll be able to go through security and queue at the touch points an hour before early entry. Also, like the other parks, they'll let you in well before 7:30 or whatever the early entry time is for that day. The scan point for early entry is just beyond the front gates. Again, only one person scans. From there, the vast majority of the guests are heading straight to Flight of Passage, which is by far the most popular ride in the park. It's not even close, okay? It's not on Genie Plus. It's an individual lighting lane, so it's definitely a good option to rope drop. From the front, it's a straight shot to Discovery Island, which is the hub for this park, right? And then from there, you're going to keep left and follow the walkway into Pandora. Cast members will hold you on the far side of the bridge that leads into the land. There will be cast members from both Flight of Passage and Navi River Journey here, but we don't suggest Navi River Journey unless you've got someone in your party who isn't tall enough to ride Flight of Passage. We've done this before when Sophia was too small to ride Flight of Passage, but assuming you're following the masses, here's how that goes. This is not quite as chaotic as Seven Dwarfs Mine Train in Magic Kingdom.
It's a close second,
but it's close. Yeah, 100%. The cast members from Flight of Passage will take you to the right, where you'll funnel into kind of a smaller space. And then eventually that front cast member is going to plant themselves, like literally right in the middle of the walkway. And everyone's going to have to do a hard hook 180 around this cast member. And that's where you start to funnel into like a smaller queue where you end up being side by side with your party.
But of course, you were originally starting from the massive glump of people.
Yeah, 100%, right? So this is the absolute worst part of the morning, and it is chaotic. But
Hold on to your kids.
Yeah, exactly. But again, once you're through there, that's the worst part. Once you're side by side with your party again, you start the long walk through the land and through the queue.
And it's very nice.
Yeah,
at that
100%.
Point.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Like, it's such a beautiful land.
Yeah,
like,
it is.
I can't help but have my phone out and like be filming,
Every time,
the floating mountains and all the like fauna, and it's just so nice there.
Absolutely.
Something to keep in mind as well is this attraction does take a little longer with the pre-shows and the load unload, but if you were near the front, you'll still be out with time left in early entry. From there, we suggest heading to Navi River Journey, which is literally right next door. This is usually a walk-on or a 5-minute wait, like at the very max.
So once you're done the 2 attractions in Pandora, we actually suggest heading to Kilimanjaro Safaris from here. This will have a wait time, but it's not going to be too bad, and it only gets worse as the day wears on. The longest we've ever waited for this after hitting Pandora first was 35 minutes, and that was actually on our most recent trip, but everything was kind of off that day on Animal Kingdom.
Like, it was so busy. It's the busiest I've ever seen it.
Everything was just a little bit different than what it normally is, because normally it's not very busy on that week that we were there. So all things considered, though, it went very well. Kilimanjaro Safaris is a long attraction. It's around 20 or 25 minutes, so you'll be well into park opening by this point. From here, we suggest heading to Asia to ride Expedition Everest. Again, it had a bit of a longer wait than our most recent trip, but every trip before, it's been about 10 minutes or so, even less. It's a walk-on. We've actually ridden it more than once.
Yeah, 100%. Yep.
And from there, you're going to head to another attraction, such as Dinosaur or Cali River Rapids, if you don't mind getting wet, and you will get wet.
Yep.
In our opinion, Genie Plus is actually not necessary in Animal Kingdom, even on busy days. We never buy it there. I think we bought it once the first time we really went, and then we learned our lesson. Our very first trip,
Yep.
There really is only a handful of attractions on Genie Plus, and you can easily get these done first thing in the morning.
Yep, agreed 100%.
If you're a non-resort guest, again, it's still worth coming early and heading into the park when it officially opens. You'll be able to go into the park, but you're actually going to be confined to the very, very front of the park, and there's not a whole lot to see or do here until you get deeper into the park. You won't even actually be able to see the Tree of Life from this vantage point, so something to keep in mind as well.
Yeah, agreed.
Once the park opens and you are let in, Flight of Passage is still your best bet. The wait is going to be long already, but nowhere near as long as it's going to be at the height of the day. So it's actually good to start that one first.
Yep.
If you're not early entry.
Yeah, agreed. Because if it's something like, say, like 45 minutes, 60 minutes.
Remember, it probably won't be that long.
Yeah, 100%. Yep. It probably won't be that long. And then the second thing, too, is that it like consistently has 90 minutes or more wait time. Like on our most recent trip, it was pushing 135 minutes at some point. So something to keep in mind there. It's definitely a good one to head to, even if you're not there for early entry.
Navi River Journey can get high wait times too during the day as well, just because of its location. So it's a good one to head to probably afterwards before the wait times swell.
Yeah, 100%. Another thing to keep in mind too is that best laid plans, right? So every single attraction that we've talked about this morning for rope drop, at some point or another at one of our trips did not open. So yeah, what I mean by that is, like, so for example, we rope dropped Tower of Terror, wasn't opening. We rope dropped Remy's, wasn't opening. We rope dropped Rise, wasn't opening, right? Yep. We rope dropped Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, wasn't opening. That was on our most recent trip.
That was so disappointing for
We
the
were
kids.
in line from like 8:30 to 9:05. And cast members like outright said, like, don't waste your time. It's going to be at least another hour. So we had to switch gears, right? So moral of the story, what I'm getting at is that
yeah, that's right. That rope drop was completely wasted because we literally stood in a line.
We lost our entire early entry time that morning, which is unfortunate, right? And that's the gamble you take.
And that was our last day.
That's the thing. Like, and sometimes it works out. So for example, we've been to Remy's where it didn't open at 8:30, but it opened at like 8:45. So that's still worth waiting there because you don't want to leave and then you'll never have a lower wait, right? Even if you just wait an extra 15 minutes to get on. But sometimes it doesn't open, right? So the moral of the story is don't let that derail your day, right? Sometimes things don't go exactly as planned. Sometimes you got to switch gears. Like, you try to make the best of it. Like an example of that is, you know, we rope dropped Tower of Terror, wasn't opening. It didn't look like it was going to open anytime soon. So we switched gear and we went to Rise. And I think you remember that time? And we only waited like 10 minutes at Rise to get on. So, you know, early entry is busy, but it's not so busy that if you have to switch gears like that, it's going to completely derail your morning. So just try to stay positive. We know that's harder said than done. And like, you know, if this is your trip that you've been planning for, you know, months or years and, you know, you're just weighing all of this pressure on these days, just remember that sometimes things don't go quite as planned and that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
With all that said, this is how we like to structure our days, right? Our early entry days in each park and our rope drop strategy for each park. We aren't just making this up, right? This is tried and true. We've done this multiple times at different times of year, spring, fall, Halloween time, Christmas time, and it's consistently worked for us and our family. I realize you may not want to rope drop, or at least not every day, and that's totally okay. You can still have a magical day, and if you're purchasing Genie Plus, you can stack lightning lanes to have an efficient afternoon or something similar in the parks, right?
Absolutely.
That's the beauty of it. There's more than one way to do the parks, and the best thing you can do is what works for you and your family, right? So for us, we enjoy rope dropping, right? As a family, it's not difficult to accomplish this. We're early risers, so are our kids, at least at this stage in their lives, right? So if you're interested in rope dropping, rest assured that we've practiced what we've preached here, and you'll likely have success if you do something similar.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for joining us to talk rope dropping strategies today. Like we said at the beginning, we do it all the time and we genuinely enjoy it.
Yeah, agreed 100%. Please subscribe, rate, and review the podcast if you haven't already so you don't miss any future episodes. It also increases our reach so we can help reach more people and we can help them have great vacations.
Absolutely. Yep. You can also find us on Instagram and TikTok at letsgo.todisney, as well as on our Facebook page, Let's Go to Disney.
Have a great day and we'll see you real soon.